Hi, I'm Ricky Miranda. I'm the Audio Experience Manager here at the McIntosh House of Sound in Chelsea, New York. We're starting up here on the roof where we have some of our Sonus Faber Aster indoor-outdoor speakers. Normally these are powered by a McIntosh MI128 amplifier that we've got in a system that we'll see downstairs. But if you take a look around, here we are nestled in the middle of downtown Manhattan, and really it's a nice place to be able to escape from the sounds of the city and the hustle and bustle. You know, we're still in the middle of the city, but with the sound that we're able to achieve up here really takes you out of this place and puts you into some place really fun to be at. And then from here, we'll go ahead and actually walk down through the rest of the house, the same way that a person coming on a tour would be able to experience it. And we'll start from here. We'll go down through to the next system. And here we are on our 5th floor where we have the smaller of the two reference systems that are in the house. This is a full McIntosh system. If we start up here at the top, we have our C2700 tube preamp, which is going out into the MQ112, which is a new outboard EQ released earlier this year. We have two physical sources in this system, the MCD600 and the MT5. These are both the second to the top of the tier of what McIntosh makes in each of these categories. From there, from the C2700 and the MQ112, we lead into an ME220, which if you take a look around the room, you'll see that this is a very non-ideal space to do the type of things that we're doing. We've got a lot of glass. There's a big open area here that leads off into the stairwell and the rest of the house. But even with these limitations, the ME220 is able to allow us to have the equipment perform as if it was in the perfect space. You know, the software Room Perfect that we use in here really does what it says on the tin and makes the room as perfect as it can possibly be. Out from there, we have one of our currently discontinued products, but an amplifier that we built for 13 years. One of the main reasons we keep it around here is that this is a half of a ton of amplification between these 6 boxes. And thankfully, I do have their replacement in the larger system downstairs, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But this is our 2,000 watt mono block. It's also built on our quad balance technology. So as you take notice, as we put this thing up to 100% on the dial with 2,000 watts per side going through 162 drivers in the room, we detect basically no hum. So these things are actively rejecting noise on top of just being built really, really well, which means we're able to get more of the music when we're listening to it. When the music gets really, really quiet, we're able to hear all of those details because the amplifiers themselves are not creating any sort of sound and adding into that experience. And the fact that we have this 2,000 watt monoblocks is really so that we can play something like this, the XRT 2.1. So this is McIntosh's large line source speaker. And this is really, really awesome for folks who have really large spaces, high ceilings, marble or polished concrete floors, because they really focus on presenting the sound in a very even distribution within the room, no matter what shape or size the room is. Because of the way that the sound coming out of these different drivers interacts with themselves, it means that the closer you are to the tower, the less of these drivers can physically interact with your ears, which means you get the same relative volume no matter where you are in the space. So once again, you have really big, deep, high room and you want to have an entertaining party. There isn't a better set of speakers to do that than what these things are able to give you in that sort of space. And from here, we'll head down into our 2 listening rooms where we have a selection of our Rotel equipment and some more McIntosh stuff. So here we have our 2 listening rooms, which are a lot more like what the average person has access to. They're about 10 feet by 13 feet with 9-foot ceilings. And as we walk in here, we'll see that we have actually a couple of different things we can swap around between, depending on what's going on with the specific tour that we have lined up for that day. So in this room, we focus on some of the equipment that we don't manufacture, but that we distribute in the States. So we have Rotel for electronics and pro-ject for turntable and phono stage. Specifically, what we're listening to in this room typically is we go out of the Rotel RAS 5000 streamer, we take the analog out of that and we go into the Michi separates. So you'll see the P5 preamp and the S5 stereo power amp there. And then off to the side, you'll also see the PhonoStage RS from pro-ject and the Rotel Diamond Series product there at the bottom, the DT6000 CD player and RA6000 integrated amp. And then all of that, depending on what we're listening to here, will go out to the Sonus Faber Sonetto 5 Generation 2s. So these were really phenomenal speakers that was released earlier this year and already has a lot of points of trickle down from the Supremas, which are Sonus Faber's true flagship speaker. And I've found it pretty impressive that we made a speaker that costs $750,000 and really doesn't exist in too many places in the world. And it's already, the things that we learned building that have already made it into a set of speakers that only cost $6,500. These have blown away nearly everyone that listens to them, especially at the price. So then from here, we'll head over to the McIntosh equivalent of this room. We've got a similar setup with a different set of speakers. So if you look around, you may be able to tell why this room got its name of the disco room, but it's a really fun spot. And this is where the most eyes are really opened as to what can be achieved with things that you don't really expect to be able to achieve that. So if you've never had a chance to listen to these speakers, the Electa Amateur 3 from Sonus Faber, you should really do yourself a favor and make it out to one of your dealers or come see us here, because this is the most surprising bookshelf speaker that anyone that I've ever talked to has experienced. What they're able to do is quite phenomenal. For a set of speakers that takes up basically no space in the room, the first question that's typically asked is, where do we keep the subwoofer? The bass response on these things is really out of this world. We do have some really nice electronics power in this stuff. So if you look over here, similar to next door with the Rotel room, we have two separate setups, an integrated amp and a separate setup. Specifically what we've got in this room, if we start at the top of these towers, our two physical sources. We have the MT2 turntable from McIntosh and the MCT500 CD transport. Down below the MCT500 CD transport, we have our C53 analog preamp and our MC275 power amp. So that, if you've ever seen McIntosh, you've probably seen that piece of equipment, the MC275. 75 watts per channel vacuum tube preamp. We've been making that thing for going on 60 something years. This is the 6th generation of that product now. Basically the most iconic piece of McIntosh gear that's ever been built. So then in the second tower, you see we have our MA12000, which is the crown jewel of what we make for integrated amplifiers. It's one of our hybrid drive devices. So you see very prominent there in the front is the vacuum tube preamp, and that is going into our 350 watt per channel autoformer solid state power amp. So whether you're running a 2, 4, or 8 ohm speaker, you're always gonna get that 350 watts. And it really gives you the best of both worlds with that really big, efficient solid state power section with the sweetness and warmth of the vacuum tube preamp. We also have a nice 8-band EQ on there, the modular DAC, which exists in all McIntosh integrated amplifiers and preamps these days, which is really nice. It's like a PCI card style installation in the back of the machine. So in 5-10 years, when the digital technology increases, we'll be able to keep you up to date with that while the rest of the machine essentially stays evergreen. And then down at the bottom, we have our MPC 500 power conditioner. So if, like me, you live in New York City, you probably live in a building that has pretty old and bad power, something like that really helps you get the most out of your system by providing you with a nice, clean, even power as opposed to the fairly fluid what's coming out of the wall. And we'll go from here. So what we're looking at here is an image of the Grateful Dead's Wall of Sound. If you take a really close look, you'll see that this is all JBL speakers and McIntosh amplifiers. See both behind Bob Weir and Jerry Garcia, you can see some of the amps that they play their guitars through. What you don't see behind this is a couple dozen more of these McIntosh amplifiers. And the idea here was that they would take what they listened to at home, which was McIntosh and JBL, and bring it live so that everyone could experience that. And then this kind of became the standard of what live sound would be. If you go to any modern arena or large club, you'll see the big lines of speakers hanging down. And this eventually evolved back into a home setup with what we saw on our 5th floor with the XRT 2.1 line source speaker. It's kind of the same general idea, is that we don't want the people that are sitting here at the front of the stage to get a different experience than the people here in the middle of the crowd. So what they learned doing this is what eventually got evolved back into that home system with the XRT 2.1. What you'll also see on this floor is an area that we use a lot when we do activations and parties. So we have a lot of other equipment in here, like the Sonus Faber Omnia and McIntosh RS150. And then up here we have a set of Sonos Harbor Lumina 2s being powered by a nice small set of pro-ject separates there with the streamer, preamp, and power amp there. All basically stuff that you can fit in your pocket and provides you with a really nice entry point into what hi-fi is. And now we'll head on down to the Suprema system. And now we're in our ballroom where we keep the largest of the stereo systems that we have here in the house. Everything in this room is the best thing that either McIntosh or Sonos Harbor builds to do the thing that we're using it for. So if we start over here at the tower, which is a nice USM cabinet, one of our furniture partners here in the house, you'll see all of the McIntosh reference sources and preamp. So at the top we have the MT10, which is our highest level of turntable that we build. Really, really awesome machine. If you take a really close look, you'll see that the platter is actually not on the machine itself, it's floating on magnets. It's kind of like a anti-gravity device there for your records themselves. Helps keep it a little bit more isolated, helps also keep the speed more uniform because there's less friction between what's going on with the platter and the chassis itself. At the bottom of this tower, we have the MCD 12,000. So this is our reference level CD player and DAC. We're doing all of the digital in this system through there. So any CDs or SACDs are going through there, as well as all of our streaming, and when we do watch television content in this room as well, all going through the MCD 12,000. And that is because the C12,000, which is the two-box preamp you see here in the center, is actually a completely analog device. So there's no digital in there whatsoever, which keeps that signal a lot more pure, keeps a lot less noise in what you're listening to as well, because the digital stuff is where a lot of noise gets introduced into your system. But then that's even further enhanced by the fact that this is two boxes. So this top box where the tubes are and the meters is where actually all of the sound happens. So any of the music, whether it's the in or the out, is in this top box, and that's all relatively low voltage. But then when you come down here to the controller, you have things like a microprocessor for volume control, you have the display, you have input switching, you have power input, all of these things that are relatively higher voltage. You keep them separate from the things that actually make sound, and you have no RF interference between those two types of components. So then coming out of the C12,000, we are actually bi-amping into this full system. We're taking the tube output and we're going up to the second amplifier that you see in this stack, which is the MC 1.25K. And if you look closely, you'll see that this is one of our 75th anniversary models. Happened this year, our 75th birthday, which is pretty awesome for a company that's still building things in the same building that's been building things since 1951. That 1200 watts is going straight over to the tower of the Suprema, which we'll talk about more here in a minute. And then from the solid state output, we're going from there over to the crossover for the Suprema, and then to the MC 2.1 kW anniversary model. So this is the replacement for the amplifier that we listened to on the system in the 5th floor with the XRT speakers. But this is the replacement that we came up with after 13 years of building that previous amplifier. It took us a long time to make it better, but the main thing that happened over those 13 years is the capacitors have gotten about half as big. So this amplifier can actually store almost twice as much electricity inside of it as the old amplifier, which for those of us in the room means that notes can go lower and a lot more controlled. It both start and stop notes faster than the old amplifier could. So talking about the crossover here, this is an active crossover for specifically the subwoofers of the Suprema. If you take a look at this, we've got a lot of controls here to really take a scalpel and fine tune what they can do in the room. You've got a phase, a low pass, and a high pass for the subs. You have a high pass for the tower if we wanted to run the tower through it in a different configuration, and then amplitude. I'm sure we can get you guys some photos of the inside of this thing, but it is absolutely gorgeous inside. Just completely discrete stereo boards for each of the two sides. Just absolutely the most pure signal possible to go out to these speakers. So let's talk about these speakers. There's a lot of stuff going on here. The project, when given to the engineers for these speakers, was just to build the best thing. They were told they could take as long as they wanted, spend as much money as they needed to spend, and if we never sold one, it'd be okay, as long as people were able to see it and go, wow, this is really crazy that this sort of thing can be achieved. That being said, they are selling as close to hotcakes as you can get for $750,000, but it's pretty awesome that these are actually making their way into homes. And beyond this speaker making its way into homes, you'll see a lot of the technology that was developed for the speaker make it into things like the Sonetto 5 Generation 2s that we looked at in the Rotel room. You'll notice initially the mid-range driver is almost identical to that. Now obviously this costs quite a bit more, but the things that they learned in making this one have made it down into what is essentially our entry-level speaker. Beyond what you see with the white driver with the Camellia surround, you'll also take a look at this. This is the molded cork enclosure that goes behind these drivers. This is from the Concertina speaker, but what's behind these set of drivers and behind the voice module in the Sonetto 5 is the same type of thing. I'm a big engineering and manufacturing nerd. I love factory videos, and seeing this for the first time blew my mind. As building material, they're taking literally the corks from wine bottles and recycling them and turning them into this. So we're actually able to give the drivers exactly what they want in order to achieve the thing that we're telling them they need to achieve. You know, traditionally you'd have an angled piece of wood and some foam in there, but now it's giving you exactly mathematically what the driver wants in order to be able to perform. So if we take a look at the actual tower itself though, now going into some of the things that we're looking at, almost everything on this speaker is customizable when someone orders a set of these. This leather is from a company called Patrona Frau, which is a company that provides leather for things like Pininfarina and Lamborghini and Ferrari. You know, the highest quality automobiles made in Italy use the same leather that's on these speakers. And this can be color coded to basically anything that someone wants. These have walnut in the traditional Sonus Faber red finish, but that can also be customized into different timbers and different finishes on those timbers. The carbon fiber on these chassis is not a thing that's on here for looks. This is not a skin that you're looking at. This is actual structural carbon fiber made by a company that builds race car chassis. So this is really solid, really serious, real stuff. You know, the reason why we use carbon fiber is that we're able to achieve a stiffness at a weight that is inachievable with any other material. And that allows us to really control the shape and size of what we're able to achieve with these speakers. Over to the subwoofer tower itself, you'll see some more carbon fiber here on the drivers. These are a very stiff, very strong 15-inch double layer woofer here with about 2.5 inches of excursion in and out. They're able to move a lot of air, which you guys experienced. Listened to these here a few minutes ago, so you can attest to that. But the main thing that we're doing here is providing a cohesive sound. You're not thinking about the fact that you're listening to these 4 15-inch woofers in this room and these 2 gigantic, beautiful towers. You're just sitting here in the room with the music that these things are creating. And they go up to 40K and down to 8, single digit, 8 hertz. So everything in there, way further than you can hear in either direction. But the important thing for the experience is that that 8 hertz still interacts with the frequencies that you can hear. And by producing them, we're able to achieve a much more pure signal than most people have experienced. And then from here, we'll go check out the theater. So now welcome to our theater. This is where I personally spend a lot of my weekends watching movies in here with friends. It's a pretty nice perk of the job. What you'll see behind me is our stack of McIntosh amplifiers and processor. So this is a 29-channel theater. The configuration that we're running is 9.16.4, all McIntosh amps and Sonus Faber speakers. So let's talk about what that configuration consists of. As mentioned, we have an MX180 processor here in the center, which is the brains of our operation. Up above it, you see 9 MC611s providing 600 watts per channel to all of our ear level speakers. So that's these Sonus Faber Arena 20s that you can see in the wall. And behind the screen, we have 3 of the Sonus Faber Arena 30s. Really easy way to think about what these 2 speakers are is roughly equivalent to a Serafino here with the Arena 20 and a Amati with the Arena 30. So if you've heard those speakers, you know what these things sound like. We've taken away the fancy wood boxes so you can put them in the wall. They cost a little bit less, but providing you with this full sonic experience. And as someone who owns a pair of Serafinos, I can tell you that these things sound really, really close to, if not exactly like a Serafino. Down below, you'll see 10 of McIntosh MI502. So those are providing our 20 channels to our 16 subwoofers and our 4 Atmos speakers. 16 subwoofers sounds like a lot, right? Movies don't ship with 16 tracks of low frequency, but we're doing a couple of different things in this room with the subwoofers, partially because the subwoofers allow us to do that. So let's talk about what these subwoofers are and what they do. So here we are looking at 10 of our 16 Arena S15 subwoofers. There's a couple important things going on with these subs, all based on the driver size that we decided to use with these. So typically with a room like this, you want to use 15s. The problem with 15s is that in general, 15s are relatively slow when compared to the drivers that we put in LCRs. So you wind up with phasing issues with almost every note that comes out. Now that's not universal. There are companies out there that build some really fast subs, but there's nobody that builds a sub that blends like this does with the rest of the speakers in the room. And the way that we're able to achieve that is by using 4 6.5-inch drivers in a specially tuned patented chamber, giving us all of the usable low frequency that a 15 would typically produce without any of those phasing issues. And because we're using an even number of drivers, we can horizontally oppose them in pairs. So we have 2 facing each other here and 2 facing each other here. So they're moving in and out together and they cancel out all physical resonance in the cabinet. So it's not like when you go to an AMC and you see a 4DX movie and there's a motor under your seat to trick you into thinking there's more bass in the room. When you experience the low frequency in this room, from across the room, you're getting energy from across the room. It's not that this cabinet is shaking the floor, that's shaking the riser, that's shaking the chair, that's shaking your butt. It's energy from across the room that's doing that. It's a lot more immersive than most people have experienced in a home theater. So then the last 4 channels of what we're doing are our Atmos speakers. So we have 4 Sonos Harbor Arena 10s up in the ceiling. You'll see one here, one there, and then symmetrically on the other side of the room, providing all of the height for what we're listening to in this space. And the last thing in the ceiling here is our Sony GTZ 380, really big, bright laser projector. Really beautifully crisp image. Last thing that we'll talk about in here is this furniture from Baxter, as is the rest of the furniture in the house. Very beautiful, very comfortable Italian-made furniture. A lot of leather and suede and big comfy cushions. All of this in a room that is about 27 feet wide by about 21 feet deep. So fairly average for what people will build a room like this in. This is a pretty common size from the folks that I've talked to configuring these sort of spaces. But that is the House of Sound. We've got a lot of really cool discrete stereos. We've got this really beautiful theater and access to the most wonderful speakers in the world, the Sonos Harbor Suprema. Come and see us.
The big question when it comes to McIntosh Group is, first I would say the perspective of the customer and making sure that we create an experience that goes beyond a usual audio experience. If you look at before House of Sound, you have many other places where you can go and listen to some of the best sound system ever. But we created this space because the experience that was missing for us is encompassing experience where not only you could listen to the best audio there is, but also really truly live an experience of being in a house with that audio around you and living kind of a dream of the perfect audiophile dream. And that's why hospitality, for instance, is a very important aspect of what we do. We actually have an on-site person named Franz, and his role is to take care of the hospitality, food and beverage element of House of Sound. So anyone who's coming here is greeted by Franz and will be offered coffee or wine, depending on the moment of the day, of course. That element is as important as the design and the audio elements of the house. That's what really creates a unique experience for our customer. And we hope that after an hour or 2 hours spending in the house, we want them to feel inspired and truly feel like they lived a unique experience in New York City. On top of this, we also host a lot of events, right? So we produce our own events, sometimes for product launches or conversation with our fans or conversations with the members of the press. And we also partner up with some brands, sometimes to create unique activation. We have a very strong partnership network when it comes to record label and music institution in New York City. We host listening session, album release events, and that usually create a good cultural moment and cultural happening calendar around the townhouse that we have here. I know on your channel that you actually visited World of McIntosh in the past, and great video. By the way, I think it was one of our best time together there. And you probably noticed, of course, that we changed location. The big motivation was that during COVID, a lot of things had to be challenged, right? And we tried to make sure that we were not expanding on that strategy and taking too much risk. And so it was the right time. Our lease was over, and we decided to, okay, let's take a little break and make sure that the townhouse and experience strategy that we had at McIntosh Group was further expanded, but with the right place. And so it took us some time. It took us some time between 21 and 22 to find the perfect space. And actually, personally, visited many other locations in New York City. I had the chance to visit some of the most beautiful spaces. And it really came down to what is a perfect spot for Chapter 2 or V2 of the Experience Center. And what we found is a 7-story townhouse, again, but this one located in Chelsea, Meatpacking, which we believe now is the best location for our customers who come visit us. It's a place that is as much touristic as it is also a business center in New York City. And we thought this location would be perfect for our new chapter. On top of that, this new location comes with a garage, comes with a rooftop, and comes with a state-of-the-art home theater, which is very important for us since the company dramatically changed since 2020. We do automotive, we have a new line of outdoor speakers from Sonus Faber, and we're pushing very hard in the world of home theater and CI and integration. And so when we found this space, we saw all those parameters being checked, and we started to envision what the perfect house would be and the perfect system would be to integrate. It took us a lot of time. It took us, I would say, a good 6 months of integration, work, design in order to put everything together. And at the end of that process, we had to think about the name. And the perfect name for us that came immediately was House of Sound. We think that this is truly a house to experience some of the best sound there is around the world. And it also has a pretty good ring to it. So yeah, House of Sound was what we elected. And we opened our doors last year. We actually now a year and 1 month in business at House of Sound, and we're lucky to host some of the most interesting people, a lot of fans, many customers of ours, and every time seeing the reaction, getting a tour, and some of them are visiting New York for the first time and getting introduced to our world, or some of them have been customers for a long time and they come to House of Sound, and every time you see similar reaction of being amazed by the hospitality and of course amazed by the sound quality. So that's what we aim to do. We aim to inspire, and hopefully the magic we created in that building is being seen and appreciated by all our visitors.